Hello. Um, this video lesson is going to be on the social purpose of encouraging intimacy, solidarity, and equality. Take note of that verb, encouraging. Try and use that in your writing. While you watch this, I would like you to pause it to take notes, either of what's on the screen or something that I've said. You can do it using the note-taking sheet that is in this same folder on Teams, or you can do your own notes using something like a Cornell template, but you should take notes throughout this video. Okay. First of all, intimacy. If we have intimacy with someone, we have some kind of very close, familiar, often loving relationship with them. So it could be with people like family or friends, or it could be a romantic relationship, as long as it's with someone who you know very well, someone you are very close with. The sorts of language that we might use to show intimacy could be in-jokes. Think about you and your group of friends, or you and your partner. You probably have in-jokes that other people just don't get. Shows that you have intimacy with that person or with those people. You are more likely to swear with someone you are intimate with, more likely to use slang, more likely to be non-standard, to use emoji, and to use things like nicknames or pet names. This is more common with people you are intimate with. My dad, for instance, I'm 41 years old and my dad still refers to me as Possum. That's his nickname for me. That's always been his nickname for me since I was a kid. But because of the relationship that we have, that's fine. I would not expect other people to call me Possum. That would be very strange. On the other hand, a principal of Wellington who we had before Mr. Blakey always called me Kath. Now, I hate being called Kath or Kathy. I have never been referred to as Kath or Kathy. And I certainly didn't introduce myself to her as Kath or Kathy, but she was trying to create that intimate, friendly relationship by using a nickname, and it did not work because I was not comfortable with it. So when you are looking for that sort of language, look for what the relationship is between those people and whether it seems like nicknames or pet names would be acceptable or would be appropriate. Now, you might find an intimate relationship shown in something like a text message. And you can just Google funny texts from parents and you get all sorts of strange things. But that might be one example of something that you could look for. Next is solidarity. Solidarity is the idea of unity, everybody being on the same page, everybody trying to achieve the same goal. So if you look at the picture there, you can see that that is a massive group of people protesting, all trying to achieve the same goal. This happened to be a protest after the Parkland school shooting in Florida a year or so back. And this was a lot of young people in particular protesting for greater gun control in America. So they all had the same goal. They all wanted to achieve the same thing. You might have solidarity with someone you work with, someone you are in a team with, someone you are in a club with, if you do a particular hobby or activity, you would have solidarity with those people. Protesters have solidarity. Pretty much any group that has a goal, any group that is trying to work together to achieve the same thing would have solidarity. And language that you might find, they would have language that applies to just them, all right, what we call exclusive language, so language that only that group really uses or that really refers to that group. They're more likely to use jargon, and it's again more likely to be non-standard. So for instance, on Twitter, I just found a tweet from this individual, this woman who had been knitting something, and look at some of the language that she uses. She uses some jargon like mistake rib and yarn, which in this case means wool, skein, which means a ball of wool. She uses a simile, it's as heavy as chainmail. She uses some non-standard punctuation at the end of her interrogative there with two question marks. And she asks for help, she asks for support. And that's an example of how to achieve solidarity, or how to encourage solidarity, people working together to achieve a common goal. On solidarity, we don't just have solidarity with people we talk face to face to. We can have what is called global solidarity. And because of the influence of technology, internet, and social media, we can now connect with people all around the world. And where previously we might have felt alone, like we were the only person who was interested in a particular thing or feeling a particular way, we can now find a community, and we can have help, we can have support, we can have friendships, and we can start revolutions. Now this can include things like mockery. If you look at that meme there, people make memes and share them all the time. It's one of the newer ways of communication that we have. And it doesn't seem to really matter who or what is being mocked. What's important is that we're all in on the joke. We all have this same goal of being amused. So think about the memes that you like to look at. What's the joke? Who is included? How does it create solidarity? Now, because of the influence of social media, people can be in contact with and communicate with greater numbers of people than they ever could before. I'll give you a couple of examples. This is Obama's Twitter homepage. He's the most followed individual on Twitter. He has 116 million followers. So that's 116 million people around the world who listen to what he has to say. Think about the power that that could give him with that many people listening to him, following him, probably agreeing with him. On Instagram, the most followed individual is Cristiano Ronaldo. He has 213 million followers on Instagram. So that's 213 million people around the world who get to see what he had for lunch. Again, think about the power and the influence that he could have with that many people. But it's not just famous people. This woman, Jonah Kashima, on YouTube has 1.7 million subscribers to her origami page. So this is what I mean about solidarity. All of these people, 1.7 million people, are interested in origami and interested in how she does origami and learning from her. So where earlier there might have been a person who was into origami and thought, oh, I don't have anyone to talk to about this. Now they have 1.7 million people around the world who they can communicate with and they can talk to, and they can share this hobby, this thing that they enjoy. It's not always positive. This is Donald Trump's Twitter from the last couple of days. He has a tendency to attack people on Twitter, even though he is ostensibly the most powerful man in the world. He uses that platform of 77.5 million followers to often attack other people, especially people he disagrees with. So if you look down towards the bottom, there are 3 tweets that are in caps that say liberate Virginia, liberate Michigan, and liberate Minnesota. They are 3 Democrat-held states in America. That's the opposing political party to his. And so he is ordering his followers, look at the way he has written them, he is ordering his followers to liberate these states as though he wants them to start a revolution. That's quite a dangerous thing for the president of a country to say. And if you go online and look at some protests that have been happening in some of these states of late, you'll see the results of that. And then the bottom tweet, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are hugely important people in American politics. Nancy Pelosi is what's called the Speaker of the House. She controls who gets to do anything in American politics. He calls her Crazy Nancy. He calls Chuck Crying Chuck Schumer. So to 77 million people around the world, this is acceptable. He has that kind of power and influence over that many people, and people see that as okay. So think about how solidarity can be formed positively as well as negatively. I'm just going to talk about that for a little bit more because it's really important and it's interesting. It's something you can look into further. The hashtag. I don't know if you use them so much. I found a lot less young people are on Twitter, and you're more likely to be on something like Instagram or Snapchat. And I don't know that you use hashtags so often as young adults on Instagram or Snapchat, but they are very common on Twitter. And they've been used to create this sense of belonging. People use them to say that, yes, I agree with what you're saying, or yes, I support you, or yes, I like this thing too. And some of them are funny and entertaining, but some of them are really serious, and they are used to create this idea of commonality, of solidarity. So they can be political ones, things like MAGA, Make America Great Again, or on the opposition, Not My President. People arguing both for and against Donald Trump. These are all popular hashtags over the last 2 or 3 years. They can be hashtag symbols of activism or protest, such as Black Lives Matter, Me Too, and I Stand With, and then fill in the blank at the end. That last one, that I Stand With one, is used when people are oppressed or abused, somehow prejudiced against. That's a show of support, is I Stand With. They can be used for mourning or respect, such as pray for, and then it's usually a city after that. A few years ago when the man drove his car up Burke Street and killed all those people, the hashtag Pray for Melbourne became popular. When there are shootings in America or when there are natural disasters around the world, people use the hashtag Pray for whatever city or whatever country. RIP is one of the most common hashtags that's used, gets used all the time. They can be used to comment on current events. This is a popular one at the moment, the hashtag of COVIDiot. So people who are doing stupid things in the wake of COVID-19, people who are not following social distancing, people who are being foolish and risking other people get hashtagged with idiots, COVIDiots. Or, this is one of my favourites, the quarantine cut. This is people putting up photos or videos of haircuts that they have given themselves or their loved ones whilst in quarantine. Some of them are very not good. Sarah Millican is a comedian, and a few years back she started a hashtag of Join In. She started it at Christmas initially, and this is a hashtag for people who are alone. It creates a sense of community or a sense of belonging, even if you are on your own. And she used it initially, like I said, at Christmas, for people who were on their own at Christmas and were maybe feeling a bit depressed because of that. They were able to find people to talk to, and they could upload photos and they could talk to each other and communicate and feel like they had some kind of community or some kind of even family. It gets used a lot, Join In now, and people are using it especially now when everybody's locked down and everybody is stuck at home. So people are using it to try and find other people who they can talk to and they can have that sense of community with. Earlier this year, when the bushfires happened, they were the most horrific fires that we've ever had in this country. 500 million animals were killed, millions of hectares of land was destroyed, people's homes were destroyed, and people lost their lives. And obviously in Australia, anytime there's a bushfire like this, we rally together as a country and we try and support the people who have been affected. But this time, because it was so big and because of the immediate influence of social media, people around the world started helping. So we had, at home, we had Celeste Barber, the comedian, who ended up raising, as you can see there, over $50 million to go to bushfire relief, to go to rural fire services and animal welfare groups. But then around the world, we had celebrities like Pink who donated $500,000. Now, Pink doesn't live in Australia. She certainly doesn't live in rural Australia where the majority of these fires happened. And yet, she felt a sense of solidarity with us as a country, as did, in the one on the right, Stephen Colbert and The Late Show. He is the most popular late night talk show host in America. And he spoke on his show about the bushfires here, and then on his website gave links to charities where people around the world could donate to help. I don't know if you saw, there were pictures in New York and London of people putting little stuffed koalas around the city with a note attached to it with a QR code that linked to a GoFundMe page where people could donate. So this sense of solidarity that people felt for us as a country, for Australia as a country, went around the world because of the positive influence of social media and technology. However, there is also the negative influence of solidarity and technology. The Red Pill is a subreddit, and the idea of this group is that it is a group for men, it is a group of men, and it is a group for men, and they call themselves incels, and that's short for involuntarily celibate. So these are men who believe that all the best women are not interested in them, but that's the fault of the women. Right? That's their basic idea. All the beautiful women do not want to have sex with these men, but it's because there's something wrong with the women, not because there's something wrong with the men. Now, once upon a time, there might have been one man here and one man there who felt like this, and they would probably have been alone, and they might have maybe had some friends or family to talk to and work through their problems and grown up a bit and moved on. But now, because of the influence of social media and technology, all of these men around the world can find each other. And once you find one person who agrees with you, it boosts your belief that you are right. And so when one of these incels finds another one, and they find another one and another one, all of a sudden they've got this community of people who all believe the same thing, and they all believe that they are right. And it leads to things like this. In 2014, a man called Elliot Rodger killed 6 people and injured 14 others by stabbing, shooting, and running them down with his car. Before he did it, he made this video. And if you look at the language in it, you have things like, girls have never been attracted to me. Girls gave their affection and sex and love to other men, but never to me. A little bit further down, I've had to rot in loneliness. It's not fair. You girls have never been attracted to me. I will punish you all for it. It's injustice, a crime. I'm the perfect guy. And so because he had this belief, and then he found all of these other people who supported this belief, it got to the point where he thought this was okay. And he thought he was doing something good for the world by killing people just because he felt lonely and he felt unloved. Now you'll see at the end he referred to himself as the Supreme Gentleman. A few years later, in Canada, a man called Alex Minassian did the same thing, killed 10 people, injured 16. You'll notice his reference at the end to "All hail the supreme gentleman, Elliot Rodger." He agreed with what that other man did. He believed the same thing. Some other examples of language in there. Reference to 4chan. Pretty negative website. Often blamed for a lot of attacks, violence, racism, homophobia, that sort of thing. Also look at his use of the words Chads and Stacys. In this world, in this community, Chads are the handsome men that somehow get all the women that these poor men can't get. And Stacys are the beautiful women that just ignore these incels. So they've got their own exclusive language. They've got their own slang. And with this language, they were able to form this community. So they have solidarity. They have a shared goal. It's just a negative one this time. All right, moving on. Our last element of this particular social purpose is equality. Equality is pretty straightforward. You know what it means to be equal. We might have equality in these sorts of relationships. I'll put citizens and leaders there, and I'll show you why in a moment. The language that we use to create equality is very similar to the language that we would use to create intimacy. Because if you think about it, if you have an intimate relationship with someone, you generally have some kind of equality with them. You and your friends are equal. You and your romantic partner are equal. Not one of you is better or superior or more important than the other. So I said before that I put citizens and leaders there. This is from Daniel Andrews' Facebook page. Now, he is the Premier of our state. So he's the most important politician in Victoria. But he refers to himself as Dan. And I want you to think about why. What is he trying to achieve by doing that? Why does he not refer to himself as Daniel? Go to his Facebook page and look at the sorts of things that he writes. Now, this is one he wrote the other day. Look at some of the language that he uses. He says, "Got a favour to ask." That's very informal. That's the sort of thing you would say to a friend, not a politician to their constituents. But he does. He says it to us, "Got a favour to ask." He refers to a young bloke. He uses the diminutive ambos for ambulance workers, paramedics. And he uses the term legend. A legend in the art department. So think about why he would use all this informal language. What is he trying to achieve? How is he trying to make himself seem as though he is equal to us and not more important than us? I strongly recommend you go to his Facebook page and look at the things that he writes. All right, we talked about slang briefly before. So just to go into it in a little more detail, slang is something that is particular to a group, and it's usually an age group more than anything, because slang is bound by time and generation. The slang that you use is not the same as the slang that I used when I was the same age as you. I am also not permitted to use your slang. Think about how uncomfortable you get when adults try and use your slang, especially if they get it wrong. Also not allowed to use your slang are your younger siblings. You get quite taken aback when your 7-year-old sister tries to use the same slang as you because it's not hers, it's yours. She will have her own as she grows up. You have your own for your age group. Slang is always informal. It's usually spoken. It can be playful. We use it to have fun. Some ways we form slang, we can use things like metaphor, irony. When we talk about sound association, we're talking about things like phonetic spellings, that sort of thing, and shortenings. But most importantly, it's not stable. It's something called transient, Transient. It changes. And because it changes all the time, that's what makes it non-standard. As soon as it gets codified, as soon as it gets put into a dictionary, then it's standard and it's likely to last for a lot longer. All right, so this is why in the other video I talked about not looking for slang as a non-standard form. You can look at it as being informal, but don't look at it as being non-standard. Have a look at all of the slang terms in that image and see which ones you still use. This is from 2016. Do you still use any of these in 2020? I imagine you use some of them, but I think quite a few of them have disappeared. And that's the thing about slang, is it changes so often. Things that you were using in January, you are possibly not still using today. All right. And then the last thing that we want to look at in this is swearing, because swearing can be used for all sorts of different purposes. It's very common, particularly online and particularly in spontaneous speech. So that off the cuff, just general conversation speech, we often find swearing. Purposes of swearing, there are 4 main ones. The first one is the expletive purpose. So that's when you drop your computer or your phone, or you run into a table and hit your foot, and you just automatically swear, right? It's that immediate reaction to some kind of strong emotional state. So that's the first one. Second one is to abuse or insult someone. And this is the swearing that is directed at a person. The others aren't, but this one is. This is where we are unhappy with someone and we want to make that known. It can be a marker of a group. So if everybody in your group swears the same, that shows that they belong. Or if someone comes to your group who swears a lot more than the rest of your group do, that can show that they don't belong, because they're not on the same page as everybody else. They don't have that in-group membership or that in-group solidarity. So think about you and your friends. Do you have particular patterns of swearing that you all do? And how does that show that you all belong to the same group? And it can be stylistic. So when you're telling a story and you want to really spice it up, you want to show how strongly you felt about something, or how incredible or how unpleasant something was, you might put in some swear words. Now, swearing in Australia is usually quite acceptable. Our cultural context allows us to swear a lot more than other English-speaking countries. But that doesn't automatically mean that it is always acceptable. And again, when we get into Unit 4 and we talk about Australian English, we'll go into that in a lot more depth. Sometimes people swear deliberately to try and create a particular identity. Think about politicians when they do this. They try and create an identity of being sort of an every person, a common person, just regular like everybody else. So they'll drop in the occasional swear word. It's not always acceptable because it's often seen as trying too hard. So when you are looking at informal language, look to see if there is any swearing, and it can be mild from something like bloody hell all the way up to, well, anything you want really. All right. Now you get some work to do. On Compass and in Teams, there is a document called Monday Morning. It is a transcript. It's a conversation between 2 men, Gary and Andrew, who are at work on a Monday morning talking about their weekend. And at one point, their supervisor, Teresa, comes and talks to them. There are a series of questions that I would like you to answer If you can print this document and answer them by hand, that would be great. If you can't, that is fine. Answer it electronically. You need to submit this to Compass when you are done. Make sure you ask for help if you are stuck. All right, I hope this helped. Good luck. See ya.